that we're 3/4 of the way through the NHL season, I wanted to start discussing with you guys who we think should win all the individual NHL awards. Today we're going to start with the Norris Trophy. I'm going to give you my top 5 candidates and we'll discuss and analyze further. And that's coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams. So if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned in the opener, I wanted to start taking a look at who we think should win the NHL awards. Now that we're 3/4 of the way through the NHL season, we have a lot of data to look at and analyze to see who should be the contenders for a lot of these trophies. So today, I wanted to start with the Norris Trophy. So I'm going to rank for you my top 5 defensemen who I think should be considered for this award this year, 1 through 5. We're going to start at number 5, work our way up, and we'll go from there. So keep in mind, this is completely subjective. To come up with my list, I analyzed everything. I looked at their point totals, I looked at their defensive play, plus, minus, power play, PK, like all their statistics, as well as going by my own eye test from what I've seen throughout the year from watching a lot of the games. So this is completely subjective on my part. Feel free to agree, disagree, leave your own list down below in the comments, and we'll feel free to have a discussion and debate on who we think should win. Now, before I jump into my top 5, I just want to give a couple honorable mentions. There's a few guys here that I think are having pretty good seasons, but just not good enough to get into the conversation for the Norris Trophy. So let's start with that. So first of all, Erik Karlsson, obviously having a tremendous offensive season as always, but his defensive game has completely slipped away this year. I fully suspected Erik Karlsson to have a little bit of a slow start this year because of the big injury and recovery and everything he went through after the season ended last year, but he really hasn't been himself defensively. Offensively, I feel like he's come around, but defensively his game is struggling, and even though he's having a fairly solid offensive year, not quite up to Erik Karlsson standards, but pretty close. He's worthy of a notable honorable mention, and that's about it right now. Another guy who I think is getting close but not quite there is John Carlson of the Washington Capitals. John Carlson right now has 50 points. He's having a pretty good offensive year, but he's -4. So overall, like I think he's pretty solid defenseman. He's going to be one of the bigger name UFAs going into the summertime. He's certainly going to be after a big raise, and his game has really come a long ways over the years of Washington. He's a tremendous defenseman. He's pretty close, but he didn't quite make my top 5. But I thought he was worthy of mentioning here that he's getting close, and you never know, depending on how these last 15 to 20 games go, maybe he can get himself into the conversation a little bit more. But as of right now, he's just on the outside looking in, according to me. Another guy to mention is having another tremendous year is Roman Josi. He seems like he oftentimes gets overlooked for a lot of these acknowledgments, but he's one of the more solid defensemen in the league. Right now, he has 44 points. He's +12. He often plays about 24, 25 minutes a game. He's a tremendous defenseman for the Predators, but sometimes I just find he doesn't always get enough acknowledgement as he should. But Roman Josi is another great defenseman having a pretty solid year, but just not quite solid enough, in my opinion, to get into the top 5 in this conversation. Now, another one here, my last one is an honorable mention. On some, I've seen some other channels discuss this topic, and they had him way higher. But in my opinion, Brent Burns is not in the conversation this year. He is an offensive juggernaut for the San Jose Sharks. He's pretty much a rover out there. He plays a little bit of everything. Hard to describe his game. He's a very unique player in that sense, but he's a -20. And I'm sorry, I can't put, I know a lot of people sometimes say plus minus is overlooked and you know, too much emphasis put on it, whatnot. But his defensive game is just not there this year, and I just really don't think he deserves to be in the conversation. So I think they're all having pretty good years, but there's something missing to their game to get into the top 5. So now let's jump in. Number 5, I've got Shane Gostisbehere of the Philadelphia Flyers. He's definitely, in my opinion, having a breakthrough season. He's got 50 points, and he's +15. Now, the only reason I have him at number 5 is he doesn't quite play the same minutes as the guys ahead of him here on this list. He averages around 21 minutes a game for the Flyers. So he's certainly playing a big role, but he's not quite the minute muncher that some of these other guys are, playing even more significant roles on their team. than Gostisbehere, but he's certainly come a long way, and he certainly deserves to be in the top 5 for sure. So Shane Gostisbehere is number 5. Number 4, we're going with PK Subban of the Nashville Predators. I'm extremely impressed with how PK's game has changed since he left Montreal. Obviously, when he was with the Habs, even though he's always been an offensive defenseman who has always put up pretty decent offensive numbers, there was a lot of situations with the Habs where there was just turnovers and poor judgment and poor defensive plays, and even on offensive turnovers, which kind of took him out of the conversation in some of these cases. So in my opinion, though, I think a lot of that was that he had to try to do too much a lot of the time because of the missing offensive pieces in Montreal. So I think he felt it upon himself that he had to take those big risks, and sometimes it just didn't pay off. And I think sometimes he was criticized a little bit too much for that. But now that he's in Nashville, he's playing a little bit more defensively sound game, still putting up the great numbers. I believe he's at 15 goals. He's got 48 points. He's a plus 14. And he's averaging over 24 minutes of ice time per game. So PK Subban is having a tremendous season and has been a big part of Nashville's success in going to the Stanley Cup Final last year, and a big part of their success to get them into the playoffs and have another shot at a deep playoff run again this year. So PK is number 4 on my list. Number 3, we've got Drew Doughty of the LA Kings. Drew Doughty is, for the last number of years, has always been in the conversation to some degree. Obviously, he's a past winner of this trophy now. Drew Doughty's having another great season, and it's not that, I know some people could probably make the argument that he might deserve to win. I just think there's a couple of guys having an even better season this year. Drew Doughty right now has 43 points, and he's a plus 18. So he's definitely one of the best two-way defenders and offensive guys in the game. You can never argue that he's not. Doughty is tremendous and very fun to watch. Being an East Coaster and the fact that he plays in LA, my only regret is I don't get to see him play more due to the time difference. But Doughty is a tremendous piece in LA, and certainly deserves a lot of recognition. Another great season, but he's number 3 on my list so far this year. But things could change. You never know. We're not at the end of the year yet. The halfway point of the year, I probably would have given him the award, or at least maybe been number 2. But I find his game, not that he's really slipped a little bit, but some other guys have really stepped forward to move ahead of him, in my opinion here. So number 2, we've got John Klingberg of the Dallas Stars. Probably one of the more underrated defensemen, having another breakout season with the Stars. Obviously another big piece in Dallas on a so-so kind of year for the Stars, but certainly a bright future for John Klingberg. Klingberg right now is a top point getter for defensemen at 54 points, and he is a plus 8, playing over 23.5 minutes per game. The other thing that I find about Klingberg that for me that helped move him up on my list to number 2, he only has 20 penalty minutes so far this year. So he's out of all these guys, he's got the fewest penalty minutes, which, you know, in that role can be very tough when you're playing a lot of the opposition's top players a lot. Obviously, especially the way the league has gone with the hooking and holding and all those types of calls, it can be tough sometimes as a defender to stay out of the box, and he does it quite a bit, and he's taken the fewest penalties amongst all these guys. So to put up those kind of numbers, plus minus, and have those few penalty minutes, for me, he deserves a lot of recognition, and I've got him on number 2. So you've probably figured out who number 1 is for me, and that's Tampa Bay Lightning's Victor Hedman. If I was handing out the award today, I'd be giving it to Hedman, hands down. Victor Hedman right now is plus 25. He's got 44 points, playing just shy 26 minutes per game. He's a very valuable piece to the Tampa Bay Lightning, by far their top defender, and in my opinion right now the top defenseman in the NHL. I mean, he's big, he's strong, he's fast, he can score. Victor Hedman really can do it all, but I think this is the year that he really breaks out, gets that Norris Trophy under his belt, and really elevates himself into the upper echelon of top defenders in the NHL. So that's my list. If I was giving him the trophy today, Victor Hedman would be my winner. So leave some comments down below. If you were handing out the trophy today, who would you give it to? Who would be your top 3 or your top 5? Leave some comments down below so we can continue the discussion and debate on who should win the award. Again, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. We have uploads here every day, sometimes more than once per day. We talk hockey here at all 31 teams all day, all the time. So certainly consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. If you haven't followed us on social media yet, you're going to see our Twitter handle on the screen right here. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, and all those accounts are linked down below in the description. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.